What's up, everybody? It's Kevin here from Happy Beard Games, and today we are looking at a custom backlight mod for the original Nintendo Game Boy. Pretty cool. And now this video is not a tutorial. It's not a how-to install guide. It's not a setup or installation tutorial at all. So if you're looking for that, it's not that type of video, but I can point you in the right direction. I can show you what video tutorials and information I used to put this one together myself. Looking for that, just ask me in the comments, and without any further ado, let's jump into today's actual video. Alright, so in today's video we're checking out a backlight mod for the original Nintendo Game Boy that I got from the website handheldlegend.com. Whoa, really cool website that allows you to buy parts, modify, and change your existing consoles, not just Nintendo Game Boy, but other video game consoles as well. They supply things like speakers, screens, LCD screens, and even the glass covering for screens and other parts like the shell and whatnot. Different parts for Game Boys and other consoles that you can use to modify and in some ways enhance the original consoles. This is Kevin from Happy Beard Games, and this is George from Happy Beard Games, and we love the Game Boy. Right, George? You love the Game Boy? Uh-oh. This Game Boy is a Game Boy that I bought very recently from Super Smash Games using trade-in credit. The shell, the buttons, and a majority of the inside parts are all the original intact Game Boy parts. However, when I bought this at Super Smash Games, and I knew about this when I bought it, I tested it out in the store, that the screen had burn-in damage. And I wish I recorded it for you because it was kind of something that I probably should have recorded and showed. But basically, when you're playing it, there was a burn around all the edges of the screen, and the screen was so blurry when movement happened in the games that it was almost impossible to play for more than 5 minutes. You didn't want to keep playing after 5 minutes or so, because of how distracting and disorienting the game looked on that screen. So that was the start of why and how I wanted to mod this Game Boy screen and change it with not only a backlight, but to make it look a lot better. Because this isn't just a backlight mod, it's a completely replaced LCD screen. And this screen has a backlight, has features such as changing the color of the screen. You can even set it to a Game Boy Color style mode where, you know, on Game Boy Color, if you put an original Game Boy game in, it'll play with expanded color palette. Now, it doesn't let you play Game Boy Color games on this Game Boy because it's an original gen Game Boy, but you can use that color palette as an option with this mod. You know the contrast wheel on the original Game Boy that allows you to adjust the brightness and darkness of the contrast of the screen? Well, on this version, since it has a backlight, that actually adjusts the brightness of the screen's backlight. If you click it in, you can change the color to a different type of backlight color, such as red, blue, green. You can do an original kind of yellow-green Game Boy. You can also do a Game Boy Color style color palette, which allows you to replicate the Super Game Boy or the Nintendo Game Boy Color version of playing original Game Boy games in, and having that special color palette to enhance the games. If you hold on the contrast wheel button for a few seconds, you can access a menu, which is really cool. In that menu, you can access things such as a brightness setting. You can do a horizontal and vertical axis to center the screen on your Game Boy. You can also add a pixel mode, which, I mean, the Game Boy is already very pixely, but it'll add a different pixel filter to it. There's other settings you can do as well, as you'll see on this video. But for the most part, the main things are centering the screen and the brightness and the color changing of the palette. This Game Boy I bought was pretty much useless if you can't play it for more than 5 minutes without getting annoyed by the brightness of the screen, the blurriness of the screen, and the lack of detail in the game, which makes it hard to play games. Some of the games were okay, such as Tetris, but other games such as Donkey Kong Land, which has more of a 3D and has more darker images in the game's graphics. It may have been that way on the original Game Boy too, but with the burn-in on the screen, it added some extra motion blur to the game's screen as well, which made it almost impossible to play games like Donkey Kong Land. That's when I went online and tried to find a backlight mod for the Game Boy. When I first started looking for them, I thought it was literally like a light that went inside your Game Boy to help shine on the screen, but it's actually more of a LCD replacement screen, and everything's just built into the screen, and it's not like a separate light as inside your Game Boy. This is the first time that I ever did a soldering project. I bought a soldering iron for it as well, and most of the tools I already have, such as the tri-wing screwdriver, which you'll need a tri-wing screwdriver. I think it's type Y1 screwdriver. And you'll also need a model kit wire cutter type tool. Basically, if you've ever built a Gundam model or have any type of plastic nipper tools, you'll need that for this Game Boy mod. Because there's some plastic inside you'll have to nip out very precisely with your Game Boy. You don't want to use scissors for that. So like I said, this is my first soldering project. It was the first time I ever used a soldering iron, which probably delayed the whole process of installation by an extra hour. This whole thing took me about 3 hours to perfect and get it right. And it's still not perfect. There's some things that I messed up on along the way. The soldering was one thing that I messed up on first, because of course I've never used a soldering iron before. I didn't know how to do it. All I know is that it gets really hot and it might make a little bit of smoke and it melts wires together, kind of. I still don't know the specifics of soldering, but I did it. So basically what I did was I tried to put the replacement speaker, because on this mod you have to do one soldering only, and that is adding a speaker to the new built-in PCB part of the inside of the Game Boy. That includes the screen. So you have to do that for this mod, but it's the easiest thing to do. And it's not too stressful. Just don't overthink it. Don't get worked up. Don't overthink it like I did, or else you might mess up the first time. So I messed up the first time. I pretty much ruined the speaker that I got originally because I tried to cut in and extend the wire, but that doesn't make any sense, so I messed it up. So what I did was I took my original Game Boy speakers, which were in this original Game Boy, and I soldered those to the new board. Now I will give you a little word of advice. There are guides online that I will point you to that have an issue with this Game Boy screen, and basically it messed up and ruined part of this Game Boy screen that I bought. Just the screen, not the whole thing. The reason for that is because this is like a newer model and there's no guide for it, I guess, and the guide that I used was for an older version where the screen was taller. The part that I messed up on the most, and pretty much the biggest mess up part that I can still see now, is why there is some stickiness at the top of the screen. There's double-sided tape included with this kit, so on the video I was watching for an older version of the screen, it said to put one strip of tape on the bottom, one strip of tape on the top of the screen, and then you would help you like stay in place. Yeah, on this one you don't put that much tape on it, if any at all. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're supposed to put the tape on it at all, because there's no real instructions included, and it says the instructions are like coming soon or something on the website, so I thought the video guide would be good. So I followed the video guide, and then you can see the tape mostly when the screen's off, and it's not too distracting really, but you can see the stickiness of the double-sided tape through the Game Boy screen, which on the video I watched said that you would not be able to see it through the screen. But you can, because the screen's smaller, I guess, than the one in the video. So they gotta get a new tutorial going for this new Game Boy backlight. They really do, because it confused me, and it kind of messed it up. So I'm gonna have to buy another one later on, but now I know for advance not to put the tape on the top, or at least don't put the tape on the top when it's like a full strip of tape. I don't know, I did it pretty carefully too, but it came out wrong. Other than that, the procedure of installing this mod was very easy, just very time consuming and very precise. There was things that I wanted to get perfect, things that I wanted to get right, and I did my best. And I learned some new things such as soldering and things about the inside of the Game Boy that I didn't know before. So it was a pretty cool experience to be able to try this out. And it worked, all in the end it worked. One of the hardest part was connecting the ribbon wires inside the Game Boy, which took a little bit of precision. But they weren't too hard to do. It was almost harder to do that than soldering. It took longer to try to connect some of these wires than the soldering part, actually. The soldering part made me very nervous, though. Altogether, it works, and I would say that this is definitely worth it. If you have a Game Boy and you intend to use it and play games on it, getting a backlight mod is pretty much a must-have these days. Like, definitely. Like, everything else you have has a backlight screen, and now you're used to it. This mod is awesome. I haven't had any problems with it since I installed it. It's nothing wrong. It's just awesome to have this backlight and basically allowing you to revisit your old Game Boy library in a slightly new light. I don't know if that was a bad pun or not, but we're leaving it in. My personal experiences with the Nintendo Game Boy came through in waves when I was a child, but you have to put yourself in that early 1990s mindset, and even in the early 1990s there were other competitors doing the same kind of thing, handheld game consoles, such as Sega's Game Gear. There was an SNK handheld, there was the Wonder Swan, but Game Boy always succeeded, and even Nintendo just in general succeeded, even with the Game Boy Advance and the DS versus the PSP, and going on through the 3DS and now the Switch. Nintendo always comes out on top when it comes to handhelds. But back in the day, Game Boy was known as something that was the best way to play your games on the go. At least from whatever I heard. Every friend that I knew, even every adult at the time that I knew about the Game Boy. It was really popular and really big. Not only did the Game Boy feature NES-style gameplay and game quality on the go, it featured a headphone port, a contrast selector, volume selector, and interchangeable games. That means that with Tiger handhelds, you've got one game on one system. Most of those handhelds were games on one system, but on the Game Boy, you can buy games just like for your NES. You can buy games, change them out. There was even a Game Link cable option to allow you to play two players with two different Game Boys. But like I said, the Game Boy went through waves in my childhood. I had a Game Boy, and I was actively using the Game Boy, mostly the Game Boy Pocket for me, from when I was 3 years old till I was 10 years old. It was a long time playing the Game Boy, all the way up until the Game Boy Color came out. I pretty much used a lot of Game Boy games. Pretty much all my handheld experience was just Game Boy stuff for a good 10 years. It was a long time because the Game Boy Advance came out when I was 11. So it's a long time. My very first experiences with the Nintendo Game Boy were on a Game Boy similar to this, but the gray one, the big original Game Boy. Now this Game Boy I had borrowed from my aunt when I visited her, which she lives pretty far away on the other side of the country, so I didn't visit her too often, but she did introduce me to some very awesome video games early on, such as Super Metroid and Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. But over on the Game Boy, which I hadn't played until then, but I had a Super Nintendo at the time, it kind of blew my mind being able to play games on your own personal screen anywhere you go. And some of the first games that I played were the Castlevania Adventure, I played Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan, and I played Super Mario Land games. These games were the games that I recognized from the Super Nintendo in a smaller but handheld and completely portable version. And I read about them in Nintendo Power Magazine, which I have been subscribed to from a very early age. The next wave for me of playing Game Boy came when I got the Game Boy Pocket and I got the game The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening was a big deal for me as it was the second Zelda game that I ever played, right after Link to the Past. And I loved this game. Although I didn't beat it for very many years later, I played it a lot as a kid, and it's very memorable to me. The soundtrack, character setting, and the art style are very iconic and memorable to me. The next wave of games that were important to me and came in a very big smash hit that kind of took the United States by storm was, of course, Pokemon. Pokemon Blue was the one that I chose at the very beginning. This is Pokemon Blue, and it's an incredibly iconic game. The series is still going strong to this day, but when it came out, it was like a tidal wave of Pokemon was just everywhere. Everybody knew what it was after less than a year of it being out, and it was huge. It was a big success, and there's a card game, an anime, a billion merchandise seemingly, and it was everywhere. It was a big deal, a really big deal, especially when you were 8 years old at the time. Pokemon Blue, that's where I started getting really into the Game Boy. But you may be asking yourself, Kevin, why buy a Game Boy? Why play a Game Boy in the year 2022? Why not just download the games and emulate them on your computer, your phone, or any modern game console? Well, I could do that, and I have done that, and I know how to do that. It's not hard, it's very easy, it's easier than this. And there's a few reasons why personally I choose not to use emulation and ROMs and stuff like that very often. And there's a reason why you don't see me ever using emulators on my YouTube channel. My main reasoning behind why I choose not to emulate and why I choose to use the original physical media is because of the way that it makes me feel. With emulation, yes, I can play the game for free. Yes, I can beat the game. I can use save states. I can use tools to make the game look awesome, make it look graphically superior. And any settings that I might want to do, such as game mods, I can do that as well. But for me, when I play on an actual Game Boy, it's the feeling and experience of playing on the actual console that I like the most. I like this, and I prefer this method to emulation. Now, it's not saying that I won't or don't use emulation or ROMs. I'm just saying that for whatever reason, playing this on the original Game Boy feels right. It's a little bit more fun. It's a different experience when you're holding the Game Boy in your hand and you're playing it the way it was intended. And I know this is all nostalgia. I know this is all like, it's in my mind somewhere. But for some reason, just playing games on the original consoles, I prefer that. So that's my choice. It's not really like a big deal to me either. Like, I don't think emulation is evil, and I don't think that playing with carts and original consoles is perfect either. There's pros and cons to both sides in the emulation versus physical media war. And basically, it comes down to, can you afford the game? Is the game like one of those crazy expensive games? Then yeah, by all means, try to find another way to get that game and play it, because you want to play that game. If the game's never been remastered and it isn't out on current consoles, it isn't available, then you shouldn't have to spend $200 to $300 to play a single game. But for games like these on the Game Boy, which I can get, its entire mod cost about $70, plus the Game Boy was about $75, and I got that with trade-in credit at Super Smash Games. So, and a lot of other things I already had. So it's not like a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's less than $100 to do all this, pretty much. Unless you don't have a Game Boy. I don't know, it's just the feeling, the nostalgia, something in my mind triggers where like I want to play it this way. If I'm going to go back and play these games, I'm going to go back and play them right. But it's not to say it's the only way, it's not to say it's the best way. Because there are options out there to play games different ways. And that's okay, that's okay. But with emulation aside, Kevin, there's other ways you can play these games. You can play them on the Super Game Boy on your Super Nintendo, like I usually do for my live streams, or other quick play videos. Or I could use my GameCube's Game Boy Advance player. Or I could play them on a Game Boy Advance. Or I could play them on any other basically compatible console, even the Retron 5. But for some reason, even with all that, and I do have those consoles, those ways to play the game, all that stuff, but I do prefer playing on this Game Boy. And going back to get the original Game Boy and doing this mod basically allows me to revisit parts of my childhood. Like, basically when you have a game as a kid, maybe you didn't actually complete it all the way, or maybe you just want to go back and revisit it. So I can go back, recreate the experience of playing on the actual Game Boy, and finish up some of those games that I might have forgotten about, and in a way that makes me feel nostalgic. So it feels good, and it's fun. It's a fun way to play games. And that's what is one of the most important things about video games, is that they should be fun. Fun for everyone. Alright everybody, that's it for today's Happy Beard Games video. We checked out a Backlight mod that I recently installed on my Nintendo Game Boy Original. We talked about some of the ideas that I had when I was installing the Game Boy and getting the mod set up. We also talked about my history with the Game Boy, what I think about it, how much I love it, and things that I really enjoyed and missed about playing the Game Boy. Also, we talked about emulation and why I choose to play on this console rather than any other Game Boy console when I'm playing original Game Boy games. Alright everybody, that's it for today's video on Happy Beard Games. If you like this video, please be sure to leave it a like, comment below, subscribe today, and share it with your friends. You can also support me on my Ko-fi page. You can check out my Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages as well. Alright everybody, thanks for watching once again. Stay tuned to Happy Beard Games for more classic gaming goodness. And until next time, bye!